Should we start?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. We're 5 minutes in. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Really stoked that everyone here is joining us. This is kind of a spur of the moment idea that we came up with this week. Thank you, Zach, and thank you, RJ and Gabby, for helping propel this thing forward. The idea essentially is that we're all living through this really stressful time together and weathering the storm together. And we thought it might be fun and kind of relaxing to offer our community and the coffee community at large kind of some respite and an outlet from the day-to-day stress and general work activities. So what we decided to do was put together a little bit that we're calling story time for now. We hope to do it every Friday if it feels fun. We also hope to involve some of you and other folks in the coffee community next week and down the line. If you have stories or other things you'd like to tell, please do hit us up at info@Red Fox Coffee Merchants. And if this feels fun, we want to keep doing it. We hope that we can bring some sort of light into everyone's week at this point. So we're going to start with the theme of travel this week. Gabby, Zach, and I. Gabby, if you don't know Gabby, is one of our sales reps and the sourcing lead in Ecuador, based in Seattle. Zach is Red Fox's Director of Business Development, based in Boston. And I'm Aleco, co-founder and president of Red Fox Coffee Merchants. So you may see us every week, you may see other Red Foxes every week, and you may see some of your friends in the coffee community every week as well, in addition to us. But we hope this is fun. So who knows? We'll see how it goes. We'll see where this really goes, what really happens, but we hope it's something that makes your week a little bit lighter. Gabby's going to kick us off with the first story. Go for it, Gabby.
Cool. Hey, everybody. So I wanted to tell a fun travel story from last year in Peru. There was a small group, myself, a few roasters went down to visit Ali and Karina down in Cusco. We went to visit the Valle Inca Association. So the leader of that association is Prudencio. So we all met up in Kelka and we got in late on a Tuesday night and we needed to get up at 6 a.m. the next day. So we agreed we would leave. We're going out to Cape Rada for a few days. And so we agreed we would leave all of our bags in this hotel. And after a few days in Cape Rada, we could come back and collect our things. So we only took with us to Cape Rada our necessaries for those 2 days. So only just day packs. So we go, spend the night, leave super early, 6 a.m. in the morning, leave for Cape Rada a few days. Our time out in the Yanatile region was it was great. It was so exciting. It was fun. It was exhausting also. Lots of hiking up hills, lots of hiking down hills, lots of late nights. And then a lot of just scary driving. If you have not visited Peru, let me just warn you now, there's lots of hairpin turns. There's a lot of blind turns and just what seems like one-way roads. And all drivers are going full speed. So emotionally, as a passenger, it's exhausting. So after a few days of these, we get back to Cape Rada late at night, probably around 11 p.m. And our drivers are exhausted equally as much as we are. And so they drop us off at the hotel and leave. And at this point, I think only 2 trucks had come. We're still waiting on the 3rd truck that had Prudencio and Karina in it. So we go to the front of the hotel, we're knocking on the door. And in case you're not familiar, in Peru and many other places, small hotels or hostels and whatnot will lock their front doors at night. Not that you're not invited in, it's just a safety precaution. So we kind of expected this. So we're knocking on the front door, nobody comes. Start ringing the doorbell, nobody comes. 5-10 minutes pass, we're starting to get a little antsy. We all want to go to bed. So grab Ali, and Ali and I walk around the corner of the hotel, and I'm like, okay, I remember there being a courtyard behind the hotel. If we could hop the wall of the courtyard into the hotel, we could get ourselves in. So we go around and stone wall, and we're like, all right, it's a really big wall, not gonna work out. But we see a hole. We're like, this hole, it's about 3 feet off the ground. It's perfect for us to climb through. Except for my immediate reaction is there's gonna be like spiders, so I'm not climbing through it. And Allie's like, just no. So we go back around to the front of the hotel and we grab Charlie from Color Roasters, who in our mind, it was the most fearless person in the group to climb through the hole. So we get Charlie, come back around, and we move some stones for him. He starts going through and he jumps back. He's like, there's an alpaca on the other side of this wall. It happens to be that this hole looks into an alpaca den. It's like this 12-foot by 12-foot little den in the back of this hotel's courtyard. And so Charlie's like, I don't want to get spit in my face. I'm not jumping through this hole. So right then we luckily hear Prudencio, his truck had come. He runs, he's like, what are you guys doing? We're like, well, we can't get into the hotel. It's now been, we're looking at 15, 20 minutes of us standing outside of this hotel door, just ringing the doorbell, knocking with no response. So Prudencio's like, I got this. Jumps through this hole, head first, no fear, right into the alpacas, gets through, looks at an alpaca, just yells in its face, and the alpaca's like, what are you doing here? No worries. Prudencio hops the fence, walks across the courtyard. We don't see him anymore. So we all go to the front of the hotel. Another like 2 minutes pass, nothing. And we're like, all right, well, we lost Prudencio. Great. Someone else is going to have to go through the hole. Luckily, the door unlocks right then. We get inside. There's a lot of celebration. We're being loud. We turn on all the lights. I go behind the concierge stand, start handing out keys to everybody. And right then, this small person walks around the corner and is like, hello, can I help you guys? After 45 minutes of doorbells and knocking on doors and climbing through walls and cheers and celebration, finally the tenant comes to let us into the hotel. And that's why Prudencio is so great. Is he'll go headfirst into anything for us.
Pretty good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so funny. The idea of you guys trying to break into the back, only to be face to face with an alpaca.
I think Allie has photos of Prudencio's feet coming out of this like brick wall or stone wall somewhere. So make sure to ask Allie if she still has those photos. But somewhere there are just feet in a wall.
That's such a great story.
Anyone in too, if anyone feels like jumping on the screen at any point too. Don't be bashful. Zach, are you up next?
I'm up next.
Let's hear your story, Zach.
All right. So I'm going to tell a story that I think is probably near and dear to everybody. I have a 1-year-old that is home with us, and it's called The Very Hungry Caterpillar. So just kidding, JK. JK Rawlings, everybody, JK Rawlings. I know that one by memory already. My travel story is about my first trip with Red Fox. And the timing for this trip is really important because I had just started working at Red Fox a few weeks prior. And it was my first time spending any significant amount of time in person together with the team. Allie, Aleco, Joel, Julia, Tony, and Tibet and Louise in Peru. Little bit of background for those of you that don't know me. I have what the medical profession would describe as a crippling case of ADHD. I'm an open book with an inability to filter and late to pick up on social cues. So,
but at least self-aware, no?
Very self-aware.
So, for example, just so everybody understands, I was once supporting my father run a 100-mile ultramarathon, and he wanted to set his personal best time for that. But he also has a rule about always walking the uphills. This will be important later. So what did I do? I selected the thinnest twig with just the right amount of spring to it and waited near the finish line at the bottom of the last hill. And well, when my 60-plus-some-year-old father came jogging through, I assure you, I did the right thing and supported him finishing with his fastest time for that race. So He had a personal best. Anyway, where was I? That's right, East Coast ADD, working for a very chill, super cool California company. Not out of place at all. So I'm selling myself short, but you get the idea.
You are so.
The team was about to regret inviting me to join them on a trip to Cusco where they would have to spend hours upon hours in a car together. So we all gathered in Lima for a couple of days to have an overview of Red Fox Peruvian operations and talk through the game plan for the year ahead. I basically tried to put everything we talked about into a spreadsheet, pivot the data around, and offer what limited value I could, having just started a few weeks prior. After that, it was off to Cusco. T-Bed, who I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with, was a field agent that worked with Red Fox at the time. He traveled all over, flying frequently to visit all the producer groups that we work with. He's an incredibly dynamic personality, and for me, it was very easy to quickly get along with, even though there was a complete language barrier. Me with limited Spanish and him with limited English. So I like T-Bed. I think he's cool and he's fun. And so, when we boarded the plane, T-Bed was already there, sitting in first class. He had been upgraded, and I was like, wow, super cool. Not to be outdone with my newly formed friendly rivalry, I plopped down beside him in first class, even though my ticket was for coach, really because it didn't hurt that I was riding a wave of coca leaf infused chocolate courage that I had picked up in duty free and devoured prior to boarding. So we landed in Cusco, 11,200 feet at altitude, and checked into our hotel. And obviously, what's the first thing that you do at altitude? You dance. So T-Bed, having just learned of my love for dance, started teaching me some Peruvian dance moves. Okay, which I will now attempt to demonstrate for the moment. Pretty sure it went something like, and so, as you can imagine, my heart was racing at 11,000 feet. So the next day, we drove to Calca and we met up with Prudencio, who Gabby spoke about in the Via Inca producer group. And something like 5 to 6 hours into the drive, we pulled off at an incredibly beautiful vista for lunch and met with a small group of producers who at the end generously offered coca leaves by the handful to enjoy with them. And I know what everybody's thinking. That's exactly what my colleagues were excited to see me be eating prior to getting back into the car with them near 15,000 feet. So I believe I got back into the car with Joel next. Joel, for those of you that don't know, is our director of quality. And he has a degree in Buddhist studies. So obviously that wouldn't stop me from trying to test his patience. And now that I think about it, I'm wondering if the others stuck him with me because they thought he'd be the only one with enough patience to put up with my rendition of 20 questions, 20,000 questions. I'm my own favorite comedian, so that's just the way this is gonna go. So the interesting thing about, sorry?
I'm sure they're all laughing at home. You just can't see their face.
I knew I should have installed the laugh track plugin before we started this. But anyway, the interesting thing about farm visits is in this region is that you have to walk down from the road to visit farms. It was a very, very fun hike down, and it was great getting to know Joel. He's one of my favorite people. But the interesting thing about hiking down was that you had to hike up. And as we all know, you always walk the uphills. However, from my experience, I wanted to be sure and support my new friend Joel as best possible. So of course, I did what any good support friend would do. I started looking for the perfect twig with just the right amount of spring to it to support Joel getting back up the hill at altitude. I love you, Joel. So the last night in Cusco, we decided to explore the city. It had been a great trip. I was eating elote, which is basically corn covered in mayonnaise, covered in cheese and some, I don't know, pepper. How terribly have I butchered that, Aleco?
Close enough, let's say.
All right.
Sounds more Mexican than Peruvian, but they have it too.
Okay. We were winding our way through progressively narrow alleyways, having a great time poking in shops and looking at small artist galleries. And suddenly, I was grabbed from behind. And pulled to the side and pushed up against the wall. And two men were shouting at me, motioning me for empty my pockets, and they were wearing these masks. Okay, so you can only imagine how terrified I was. I thought to myself, well, it was a good run with Red Fox. I almost made it 1 month. And as my life started to flash before my eyes, T-Bed and Louise removed their masks and bust out laughing. It was awesome. It was a great trip. It was great memories. I look forward to the next time that we can all be in the same room together, and I cannot wait to get back on the road with this team.
Oh, very sweet. A+ for the costume design and the dancing. Really.
Yeah.
More of a performance piece.
I'm gonna go next, obviously. I wonder if there's one person out there who wants to join me in the audience or not, though. No pressure. Okay. I'm going to go it alone. So my story dates back to December 2012. It was, or excuse me, yeah, December 2012. So my period in between leaving Portland and starting Red Fox, working with Tom at Coffee Shrub and Sweet Maria's. And it was kind of the beginnings of my first foray into selling green coffee again, like I had in Costa Rica. And I was excited about putting together a group of my friends and fellow coffee buyers for a trip out to Agaro in Western Ethiopia, in the Jimma zone. An area where I felt like, I had done a lot of the early discovery via TechnoServe, of course, and all of the good folks there who helped put these projects together in the few years prior to 2012. So I had Tom from Sweet Maria's, my good friend Ryan Brown, who used to work for me at Stumptown and at the time was at Tonks, George and Jenny Howell, Colby from Verve, Chris Jordan, who was still running TechnoServe out there, was our host, along with myself, and Phil Laneker from Flying Goat in Healdsburg. It was a really great crew. So we fly in to Addis Ababa. Unfortunately, Ryan's luggage gets lost along the way. He has no camping gear or anything, and we're going to be out camping in Jimma for the next week. So we proceed as planned, fly out to Jimma from Addis, and the Jimma airport is like a raggedy old thing, really small. There's one gate. There's a whole lot of security, all things considered, getting through it. But it's almost like a little shack in the middle of nowhere on the outskirts of town in Jimma. So we fly in on our prop plane. We all get off. The luggage belt is actually just a little part of the parking lot outside where they come and drop your bags on a luggage cart. So we're waiting for all of our camping gear and such to get offloaded. At that point, George Howell remembers that he's left his camera on the plane. So he's freaking out because these planes come in, they drop off, one set of passengers, pick up the next one, and they're gone. They're not sticking around very long. There's one plane coming in a couple times a day. So George gets the airport staff to actually take him back to the plane miraculously, something that could never happen here. He hops on the luggage cart and they drive him back. We see him emerge from the plane like 5-10 minutes later, waving the camera in victory and coming over. A whole lot of emotion and stress, and kind of like sets the tone for the rest of the week. We hop in our cars and head out to Agaro. Agaro is about a 2-hour drive through there, like really, really pretty drive through drier climates, kind of like that yellowish golden hue of countryside. All of the huts and such, like dotting the road.
Beautiful.
We get into Gera, which is where Ukro and Nanachala are, and we do all of the visits. We hit a couple other washing stations. And then we finally end up at the end of the day at Durmina in Goma. And we're in Goma. Hey, we have a guest who wants to join. Can we do that?
Yeah, I think so. Can you let me know who it is?
Ryan Brown, the man himself.
Okay.
The man, the legend.
Okay, let me see if I can promote to panelist. Ryan Brown will be rejoining the webinar as a panelist.
There
You're muted. Yeah!
There he is. Out of coffee hiatus and back in. We're going to drag you in one way, kicking or screaming, if we have
Please do not refer to it as a comeback.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
So great to see you.
Yeah, thank you.
Have you heard the story that I've been telling up until this point?
Yes, although when I saw your text message, I had to switch devices. So there was like a little gap in between that I may have missed.
Okay, so the last minute or so there, I was just talking about George leaving his camera on the plane, finding it miraculously, giving a little bit of detail about the landscape out to Agaro, and then talking about a long day.
That's what I'm talking about, Jenny. I left my camera right on the plane. It's been a while since I actually heard George talk, so it's probably when you spend a few days with George, though, you get very good at doing George impressions, or one could.
Very good. It's undeniable. The tone, the behavior, all so good. So we head off into the fields, hit Nanachala, hit Ukro, hit a couple other stations, I believe, and end up at Durmina that night. No,
hit a couple of honey farms, honey depots.
Yeah,
honey depots, really.
Yeah, Ryan used to say that I really use coffee buying as a guise to smuggle honey and rum back into the country.
Yes, because you told me that.
Yeah. So we end up at Durmina, and there's a whole crew of us. And me being me, of course, I brought a box full of wine along for the trip as well. And we're all having a good time, getting our camping gear together, eating a goat that our host very graciously slaughtered and cooked for us. Absolutely delicious. I believe we had bread and honey, maybe a couple vegetables to spare for the.
There's some vegetables, yeah. It was a well-rounded meal.
A well-rounded meal.
Yeah.
What else am I missing about that first part?
Are you talking? Well, I mean, it was nighttime. We were eating a goat. We witnessed a couple of goats being slaughtered. I remember Mac DeMarco playing. I remember you and Phil Anaker getting into a alcohol-fueled, heated discussion about vegetarianism and the significance to the Greek culture and ethos of eating meat.
So we are sitting around drinking wine, watching the fire, chatting. Some folks eventually nod off, go to bed, and are crashing. And it ends up being Phil, Ryan, and myself chatting about vegetarianism versus the virtues of meat eating. And we're going through, a bottle after another bottle and hanging out. And the conversation escalates a little bit. Phil's pretty adamant Phil has been a vegetarian for decades and decades, and very much believes in that, which I respect as well, and very much thinks that meat eating was, not necessarily the right course of action. But me being a good Greek, had to discuss the virtues on our side of, how involved it is in our part of the community and how important it is in certain religious moments and that sort of thing. And as the conversation dragged along, and as Phil and I really dug in on each side of our own end of the we're there, and it's getting slightly heated. We hear off in the distance a little the second goat was slaughtered in the middle of the conversation, which kind of put an end to the whole thing. Very good.
What did it sound like when the goat was slaughtered?
Oh, God.
It was rough.
We'll create a GIF of that for everyone later. Don't worry.
Not even a GIF, just yeah. I mean, it needs to have audio though, so you have to use TikTok or something. It's not as bad as what it sounds like when a pig is being slaughtered, which I watched a couple of different times in Brazil. I don't recommend that. I still have nightmares about that.
This is going off the rails. I'm reeling it in here. This is me reeling it in.
Yeah.
It wasn't, just to be clear, that the argument, there's many different ways to argue about the virtues of vegetarianism versus eating meat. This was specifically about the philosophical or ethical ramifications, nothing to do with any of the health part of that. There's also a health argument to have, and it wasn't that. I was just on whoever's side was going to let me sleep in their tent.
Yeah. No camping gear or anything.
I always have one change of clothes in my carry-on, but so that meant I had two things that I could rotate between. So I was just trying to be nice to anyone who hadn't already given me a spare t-shirt that I could use for the next several days, or would give me access to their tent or even their food, because all my I had food in my luggage too.
You're trying to spread the social generosity as across as evenly as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you ever get your luggage back?
Yeah. So the issue was that I arrived into Addis, and my luggage was naturally in Frankfurt, Germany, and then we were flying to Jimma the next day, and I just knew that there was no way that I would receive, that it would get to Addis before we had to fly out. So ultimately what the airlines did was send it off to Jimma, and I was like, definitely it's just going to disappear. There's no way I'm going to receive it. But it was a few days later, maybe even a week later, I can't remember. Their time also changes when you're in Ethiopia, but eventually I got it in Jimma. It arrived on an airplane in Jimma, my lonely suitcase.
But you had clean clothes.
Then for the last 3 days of that trip, I had clean clothes.
It was the last 3 days of a 2-week trip.
So I changed 3 times a day. You know how it is.
You kept it fresh.
I picked out these outfits. People are gonna see them. But yeah, it was. Honestly, I don't reflect back on that positively. It was. I mean, the trip was fun, but it was pretty disgusting to be traveling for that many days without clean clothes. I don't actually want people to remember me this way. Please don't remember me this way.
We'll put a poll out to everybody who attended, and so that we can really get a sense of how disgusting you were.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad.
What can we use?
We're missing something else important about that trip, Aleco.
What's that?
I feel like we're missing something else important about that trip. That's not I don't have a suggestion. I just feel like there's something else.
Did you wake anybody up?
Oh, okay. No, we got past that part. It's good. The story was told.
Got it. That was awesome.
I don't have my own story prepared, or else I would contribute to this.
Yeah,
Did you buy any coffee? Joel wants to know.
Eventually, we sure did, of course. All the classics, the Nanachalas, the Yugos, the Duraminas.
Everybody's favorites.
Yeah. That trip was a harvest trip, is to check out what was happening in the middle of the season. There's never much to cup in December, if anything at all, really. That's really when it's getting going, this season itself.
This will come across as sounding self-congratulatory to the buyers who were buying those from those washing stations early on. But it is funny from the consumer side now how like half of the best coffees I have every year are from one of those washing stations that were being purchased starting in 2011. Duramina, Yukro, Nanochala, like every year. And certainly like the lion's share of coffees that that I'm having as a consumer here in Denver from East Africa.
Well, it's a good moment too. Should you feel like you need to shut yourself into your home for any reason, a whole lot of fresh Duramina, Yukro, and Nanochala that just arrived in the last month. People are roasting it. It's out there.
That was awesome. That was a good story. Ryan, thank you so much for jumping on.
It's my pleasure. Does that mean you're going to demote me now?
Into this last minute, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. Sorry, I wasn't there for the beginning.
We'll see you next week on Storytime.
Joel is recommending Sweet Bloom in Denver for you, where you might be able to find some of those coffees. I'm sure
Joel,
they'll have
don't
an
just pretend like I haven't been living here for 4 years. What's next? You're going to recommend a hike at Red Rocks? Come on, dude. Ryan, I recommend you call it the Mile High City. That's something fun. Oh, he's specifically telling me it has Duramina. Okay, that's a little different. Sorry, Joel.
Yeah, that's
Right, you should try Sweet Bloom Coffee. They do a pretty good job.
Okay, cool. I'll check out Sweet Bloom. I love Sweet Bloom, but they're not open on Sundays. So Sweet Bloom, if you're listening,
please.
I also drink coffee on Sundays.
There you go. Cool. Thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. All right. Should we call it a Friday? A Storytime session number 1. Folks, again, if you have any interest in joining us at any point in the coming weeks, please let us know. Hit us up at info@redfoxcoffeemerchants.com.
We have a few questions. Am I reading that right?
And we're about 40 minutes in.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to ask a couple questions? Oh, we're calling it. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.